Hi, I'm Felix Jones and this is my associate Callum Sykes, and we are here to review the film The World's End. And keeping with the theme of this film, we have decided that in order to keep with the theme, we are going to have 1 pint for each point of discussion. There are 12 points of discussion, 12 pints, and by the end we may be a bit smashed. Or will we?
Gary King actually probably wasn't.
Yeah, he was. That's going to be one of our first points of discussion. Gary King actually was able to drink 11 pints and yet still be able to competently fight off robots. Let's see how well we would be capable of doing that after 12 pints. First point of discussion about The World's End. Well, let's actually first say what we mainly thought of it. I didn't like it, and I'm going to go into why I don't like it. What did you think of it, Carl?
I thought it was quite an average film. A film which probably was considered not so good because people had prejudged it as a Nick Frost and Simon Pegg film.
We'll go into all that kind of stuff later, but let's leave that for the time being. First, let's talk about one of the first problems with what we... Oh, by the way, I'm going to be keeping a counter on how many drinks we've had, because we've had 12 pints, I'm going to be cutting it up, anyway, so far we've had 1 drink, and I'll put a counter somewhere around here. Anyway, so one of the main problems with the film was the fact that I found it very unfunny for the most part. There was a lot of very annoying reaction shots that I really didn't get on with, and one of the things with Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead is that they are both very quotable films. I still quote them on a day-to-day basis. I frequently will make a plan with somebody, and the plan will finish with, "How's that for a slice of fried gold?" And then they'll go, "Yeah, boy," and also there's quotes from Hot Fuzz like, "Punch that shit." Some really great quotable moments. But then we look at this movie where I'm just going to take the extract that really wound me up.
I know which one you're talking about. The one which he goes into the hotel.
Yeah, but before that, it starts before that, my extract, because he's got the guys outside, and they call his car an antique. Gary King's got his friends outside and he calls the car an antique, and he goes, "Let's get this antique on the road show." And then you see all of their faces as it goes dong, 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 and they're all like this. And that's really cheap, unfunny comedy. And then we get to the next bit, and
I mean, just stop you there. I did notice when in the cinema, no one laughed at that at all, and that was the only part of the movie which I thought that they just overdid it with the sort of terrible comedy.
The thing is, they just did it again almost instantly afterwards, because you had the big speech where they list off all the pubs where Gary's going, and then we'll be blind, drunk, and that's just really blatantly attempting to be quotable, which I think very much fails, because nobody's going to bother to learn all that, and if they do, then they really have no sense of how that is not funny in any way at all. And then instantly...
I did enjoy that speech, though.
Did you? Did you really enjoy that speech?
I did. He reeled it off in such a amusing manner.
He reeled it off in a manner of somebody reeling something off. That's like if I read you a shopping list. Would you find that really funny? I was like, eggs, tomatoes, chocolate, bleach. We're not going to eat bleach.
Shopping list.
It's all the things I'm going to eat this week. Straight after he finishes that really unquotable speech, we instantly have another reaction shot from the hotel woman going... The problem is, I watched this film twice, and the first time I was drunk, and I had to go see it again, and I'd already formed a bit of my opinion on it that it wasn't very funny, and every now and then I would say, actually, that joke was kind of good, and Cam pointed this out to me, but that really was just because when you say that joke was actually quite good, it's like when people see my videos and they go, "Oh yeah, that was actually quite a good video," in comparison to the rest of the stuff.
No, they don't mean that. I think people who say that was actually quite good is because they've seen, they've seen you and then they've seen your videos and they go, "Oh, that's pretty good."
Untalented hack I thought I was looking at. I'm not trying to pull up some kind of personal vendetta here against my friends. It's just bad choice of words, I realised. Anyway, I think that anything else you want to bring up about the humour?
No, I think that's pretty much
Yeah, okay, well, we'll move on to the next point. Drink number 2.
Okay, here's a point which I've been dying to discuss. It's where the film actually fits in with the other Simon Pegg and Nick Frost films, the Cornetto trilogy.
Yeah, okay, this is interesting because Cause even though I have a very low opinion of the movie, I would want to compare it to the other movies because naturally you want to put it into context of the rest of the Cornetto trilogy. Right, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz are movies that I consider. Well, Shaun of the Dead is one of my favourite comedies. It's what I consider almost a perfect movie, as it is all the components of a good movie. It's got action, comedy, romance. There's a lot to enjoy, and there's almost something for everybody.
It's very detached from politics.
I'll give you that. It's no Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. On that front.
Sorry, this is probably going away from the point, but with Shaun of the Dead, don't you feel like you should know more? It's very, very intuitive. It's just their little world.
Yeah, that's something else that we're going to bring up later.
Even though they watch the news,
bring up the idea of social satire. I'm going to come back to that after a few more points. Before when I don't know what the word social satire means. But in the context of the rest of the trilogy, even if I was to take it out of the rest of the trilogy, I wouldn't consider it a movie that was great. I might have a slightly higher opinion of it, because I would consider it maybe more mediocre than bad. But within the context of the trilogy, I think I am more inclined to lean towards bad, because Hot Fuzz is incredible. It's an incredible movie, but I prefer Shaun of the Dead for its it feels a lot more fun than Hot Fuzz. And something that's a problem with this movie is that it's a very unfun movie. It's a very depressing, very miserable kind of a film.
Well, with that, I would say it does feel very detached from the Cornetto trilogy, doesn't it? But couldn't you use that to its advantage, whereas it actually becomes a new kind of movie and a new kind of genre that Simon Pegg and Nick Frost actually create? Because what's his name? Nick Frost actually plays a very different character in these movies, and there's very, very little reference to the Cornetto trilogy in itself, apart from the Cornetto rapper at the end.
I think we're definitely going to go to talk about Nick Frost later as well. But yes, you can see how they are trying to build. I can see how they're trying to go for the original theme, but I think if they had gone for something that was identical to the other two movies, then obviously we would complain because we would consider it just rehashing the other movies. But I would still say that in this point, maybe if they had tried to give it that same spirit. I mean, I would say it still had that feeling of Britishness that came with Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, but it lacks the feeling of, well, fun. That is it. I don't feel like I'm having a good time when I'm watching it.
And why is that? Because it has all the components of fun. It has the pubs, it has the drinking culture, it has Gary King, who is an amazing character.
We will talk after this when I'm a bit more. We'll talk about this more when I'm a bit more drunk. So now I'm going to talk about the moments in the film that I actually particularly enjoyed myself. There were probably only two moments that I really enjoyed. One of them was the character of Pete, who you probably have all completely forgotten because he's not actually given much of a character. He's the one who was bullied as a child, and then at the end he ends up... I won't actually say what happens at the end because of spoilers. He's the one who was bullied as a child, and he's kind of nervous, and he's in the background, and he has very little hair.
He's a car salesman.
He's a car salesman as well. That'll help you identify him. Anyway, he tells the story about how he was bullied as a child, and his friend ignores him. Actually, I'm gonna do spoilers because this is going to be a spoiler review, I'm afraid, because the next point is a spoiler one. Anyway, yes, he talks about how he was bullied as a child, and that was quite a poignant moment for me, and I quite enjoyed that, although it didn't really come to much in the end, as we will talk more about his storyline later on in this review. The other moments that I really enjoyed was was when Gary is confronted with a robot version of his younger self, because that was a great moment, and there really is this kind of debate going on inside Gary, but he completely ruins it with that nah, because that's just been done so many times. In fact, I'll put some clips in this video of when it has been done. Anyway, that at a stretch you could say that moment was actually the debate inside Gary's mind between letting go of the past and moving forward, or trying to stay in the past as he was before. but really it wasn't, because it was a choice between whether or not you would be happy to give up your life for the robot. I suppose to an extent it's a metaphor, but it's not a particularly apt one, and it's not particularly welcome. What moments did you particularly enjoy in the movie?
Well, I'm afraid I'm not going to be as deep as that, and I suppose I'm going to enjoy. I enjoyed the most the first bits of it, where they introduced the characters, because especially Gary King, you got such a big backstory behind him, and you just thought this movie's going to become something very, very.
That really contrasts against the ending where they show that Nick Frost was narrating the entire thing.
Yeah.
It's like Nick Frost was narrating the entire thing, but the beginning begins with Gary knowing everything, but not Nick Frost.
I mean, up until the point where they actually go to, I can't even remember what it's called, Newton Haven.
That's it.
At that point, it sort of goes downhill. But before that, they really go deep into Gary King as a character, but they confuse the ending. Well, this one is about Pete, who is.
We've talked about before,
Yeah.
because the car salesman character. It's worth bringing up his storyline, because his entire storyline is bogus.
Yeah, well, just a minute. You'll know who he is because he looks about 20 years older than the rest of them.
Yes, he very much does. He's like losing hair. All the others are looking like 30 and he looks like 50. He's walking around with a Zimmer frame. He's got a pipe hanging out his mouth, glasses, like, oh, when I was young. That one, yeah. Anyway,
Not quite, but yeah, go on.
The reason why I think that his storyline is absolutely bogus is because they suddenly bring in this idea that he was bullied as a child, and when he's finally confronted with a robot version of his old bully friend, who offers him a nice apology, he treats him not only like he's not a robot, but also like he's a bastard who didn't apologise. And he starts beating the shit out of him.
I think I defend him in that point, because that point was when he was trying to be tempted, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he would try and smack him over the head.
Yeah, but as far as he was treating him like he wasn't a robot. And if he was treating him like he was a robot, why was he going, I hate you, you wanker?
Well, because you can tie the both together.
Mm. Pete is probably the character who's mourned over least next to Martin Freeman. These are probably, we're going to come back to the mourning later because it ties into the conclusion. But actually, no, we'll talk about this now with Pete, because Pete dies and there's like a second of, oh no, Pete, and then they just forgotten about him. He never happened. And at the end of the movie, and I know spoilers, but we're going to do spoilers in this review, he ends up, the robot Pete goes back to his family. And it's like, oh yeah, he's quite a good dad, all told. Even though he's a robot and not the real Pete. The real Pete died.
That's where this movie falls down, isn't it?
We're definitely.
There's too many characters.
Don't talk about the lack of mourning yet, because that's
No.
too many characters.
There's just too many characters, isn't there? Because the other movies, they were all made up because there was the great partnership between Nick Frost and Simon Pegg.
You had the secondary characters, but they weren't necessarily vital.
Well, no, they weren't vital at all. They didn't tie into the story. They had very vague backstory.
Yeah, that was very much the problem with this story, because at least with the other characters in, like, say, Shaun of the Dead, where we have David and Diane and his girlfriend, whose name I've forgotten, at least they play some kind of role in the plot, like either as the defender or the voice of reason. David is a very interesting character because he very much plays... Well, he actually plays somebody who we could very much believe that we know, or maybe that person would be us. But then when you take somebody like every single character in this movie, other than Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, then they just become irrelevant. They're not even well-defined characters.
And the movie even admits that by just tossing them to the side.
Yeah.
As soon as they die,
exactly.
They move on.
Something I always say about a movie, when the writers throw away character like they mean nothing, and then that makes the audience feel like they mean nothing, and they don't care. Why did Nicholas Frost, Nick McNick, why did he attack Simon Pegg at the end?
I knew you were going to bring that
Yeah,
up.
I had to bring it up because I think that it's an awful moment. Really, really stupid.
You've just got to explain what's going on first.
Okay, well basically Simon Pegg is trying to complete the Golden Mile, and Nick Frost gets so angry because he thinks that Simon Pegg shouldn't make this a big part of his life, and so he actually starts physically attacking him rather than let him have the one last pint. Just let him have the one last pint. It's not going to hurt him, just give him the friggin' pint. There's no need to beat the shit out of him in order to stop him.
I wish I could oppose that opinion, but I probably think that's correct. I'm not quite sure why he started beating him, but I think it was probably because he thought he'd had enough and he needed to focus on other things.
Yeah, his life needs to move on, but
also, they had the car accident in 1997, which Gary King had run off from.
Yeah, they spoke about this thing was. Sorry, I'm just going to say this bit was dropped in at the last second. That apparently Gary King had had his friend drive him to the hospital where he'd apparently OD'd, but then there was a car accident and Gary King ran off and he was left with an injured finger. Something that was dropped in at the last second and was supposed to be used as a main plot point. That was crap. But carry on.
No, I enjoyed that.
It was dropped in at the last minute.
Well, it was meant to be like that, wasn't it? It was meant to be a sort of last minute.
No.
Oh, jeez,
you should have mentioned that earlier.
That's happened to both of them.
If you mentioned that earlier, then the bit where he goes, might as well leave him. He left you.
They mentioned all of it. They mentioned.
They just brush over that.
Well, no, because both of them had animosity towards each other, which.
Why did Gary King have animosity towards his friend?
Well, he didn't, but the other way round.
Anyway, carry on. Why would you think? Please try and oppose my opinion. I guess we are settled on the fact that it doesn't actually make any sense that he starts beating the shit.
Well, I think he starts beating him because he has previous things which have happened in their lives, mostly because of the car accident, which had.
I suppose at a stretch you could maybe justify it that way, but that doesn't mean he actually.
I think they probably wanted to punch each other for a long time.
Yeah, I guess
there's just some people in your life who you just want to punch, and it takes a few drinks before you want to do that.
I have punched him by accident. It was an accident.
I don't believe you.
It was. I had this tendency to go like to my friends, and I actually punched him in the face. I'd had a few drinks.
It was back in October. It's all right.
All in the past. No, it was. But
I never forget.
I could probably. Maybe I could agree with you on that point.
We should just turn off this.
No. I'd say that the fight may have been justified by the whole car accident thing, but even if it was, then that plot point was dropped in way too late in order to be an integral part of the plot. You need to establish these things early on, otherwise they will not stick in the audience's memory.
Well, it's stuck in our memory.
Yeah, but that's just because we've made a point that we need to memorise it, because we're doing a review.
Well, no, I was just watching the film as a ordinary Joe public. I never knew I was going to do this.
Sure you did.
I never knew I was going to do this. I didn't know I'd go to Yorkshire and review this with you.
You did, deep down in your soul. You knew that Yorkshire would be the exact place, and it would be even this house.
It was a very long journey.
You had the address programmed in your mind, just under the subconscious level.
You didn't tell me the address until yesterday.
Yeah, but you knew it, really.
Okay. Well,
in here.
Okay, let's just.
Right. What did you think of the action in the movie?
The action.
Yeah, like the fight scenes.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Well, I would say to some extent, because we have the running scenes with the robots and Nick Frost. I'm sure Nick Frost is very, very good at outrunning killer robots.
Okay, so what? He's fat.
Yeah, but the robots constantly at the beginning. The robots are like so undefeatable that you need four men to defeat 4 robots, and then nearer to the end, 4 men can beat the shit out of like an army of the bastards.
So, many movies take that course of action.
Oh yeah, the course of inconsistency.
I think even Shaun of the Dead took that course of action.
Right. I would try not to be too picky with this. I'll probably leave that bit alone. But I would say that the action, at least in the scene with the scene in the bathroom, was actually very nice, and there were some nice moments. Although, why was Nick Frost such a badass?
Okay, this is the thing with Nick Frost, isn't it?
As a character,
Nick Frost goes from a teetotaler to a badass villain,
and then to a drunk, and then back to a teetotaler. And he's frequently angry, but at the same time he's also frequently drunk, and he's able to beat the shit out of robots even with no training whatsoever.
Basically he's the most fantastic character ever.
He's the most brilliantest human who ever did live. He is just Jesus walking amongst us. He can take down any robot at the same time as being teetotal, or also at the same time as being drunk. You know, the character makes next to no sense. It's like, okay, I'm a teetotaler. Oh wait, I'm drinking, and now I'm a drunk, but now I'm teetotal. But now
he's a very conflicted character.
Conflicted in the sense that let's say if we separate this movie into 3 quarters, for the second quarter of this movie, he is just completely ignored. It's like, oh yeah, push him to the side whilst we talk about Gary and his love interest.
But Gary gets in with him. They're very entwined.
If you like, I wouldn't say so myself, because they're not really that entwined. And to an extent, it really makes you wonder why they were ever friends.
They were friends before the car accident in 1997.
And that really makes you wonder why he even bothered to come to the pub crawl. If he is that offended by that offence against him, which I would be, if somebody left me to die where I needed life-saving surgery afterwards, I wouldn't be friends with them afterwards.
He comes to the thing because he wants to meet other people.
He
wants to meet his other friends.
Yeah, that's the only reason he does it. Sure. I have no faith in that idea. Nick Frost's character has no real proper structure to him. If you're going to go with the idea of a man who is teetotal and angry, then go with that. And you know when it turns out at the end that his wife left him, we're all supposed to go. Everybody knew his wife left him. It's obvious. He has not got a partner because he is lonely. And I think one of the things that makes this movie so incredibly depressing in tone is the character that Nick Frost portrays. He's constantly going, I want to go home, I don't like this, I don't like drinking, I'm a sober man, I don't like this world, we should go home and pretend that this never happened, I'm such a normal...
He's the one who's actually...
Oh, by the way, my wife left me.
No, he's the one who's monologuing it all.
He doesn't monologue at all in the actual film, just in the ending, which we'll come to as well. But still... Oh, damn it, the man is just not a decent character. The only decent thing about him, the only thing that you can go, it's like, the only reason that you can go, oh, he's different from the other Nick Frost characters is he wears glasses. He wears glasses! He's a new character! Whee!
Going back to that, Nick Frost characters, he really doesn't fit in, does he?
In what sense?
Well, he's completely different from both the Nick Frost characters that are played.
Obviously.
I don't know. He's just more moody. He doesn't really get on with Simon Pegg.
But that's the problem.
Which is probably what the director, he said, okay, you two are not going to get on from the start, are you?
That's a very good point. Obviously Simon Pegg helped write this with Edgar Wright, I believe. But when you have that level, we don't feel like we're... I think the level of friendship between Nick Frost and Simon Pegg as a constant has been something that brought us through the other 2 movies. With Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, we have had this constant of their friendship, and that's been the centre of the film. Yeah. And if we have them actually hating each other at points,
the animosity between them is just awful.
I don't think they even become friends by the end.
It doesn't really. It just makes you feel awkward.
It makes you feel. It makes you feel unpleasant to be around these characters. You don't want to be involved in their, if I may quote Peep Show for a moment, emotional fuck pie. I don't want to be involved in that, and they are very tremendously unpleasant characters to be put together, and it's very difficult to take somebody who wants to live the hedonistic life and somebody who wants to live the life of a normal person, and if we bring them together, that can create an interesting conflict, but here it is very much just a depressing and unpleasant kind of a feeling between the two characters. Would you agree? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
I'm just agreeing on this to make it easier. Okay, this point's just for me. I'm just going to say about the fact that I think that this a lot of the plot lines in this movie are unoriginal as hell. The idea of integrating robots in with society is fresh out of the Stepford Wives original novel and either of the films, whichever you want to choose from. And the idea of having technology removed is very much fresh out of the film. I'm talking about the recent The Day the Earth Stood Still, because as much of a movie buff as I am, I actually have not seen the original The Day the Earth Stood Still.
I have.
You have?
Mm.
The black and white one?
Mhm.
What happens at the end of it?
Jesus knows.
Does technology get removed from Earth?
I've watched the new one.
And that's the new one, that's what I was talking about.
Oh.
Yeah, technology gets removed from Earth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which also happens in this movie, so that is how it is not original.
Just a minute. Before you finish that point,
Mm-hmm.
no movie is original.
Technically.
Every single movie has been done before. Every single movie has been written before. There is no movie which is fully original.
To an extent, I would say that you're right, but that's just in the idea that the very, very, very basic ideas of a plot have always been done before. But when you have a twist like that, that really is lacking any form of originality. And I mean, at least with Shaun of the Dead, you actually didn't find out why the zombies attacked. That's fine, but just the idea of removing all technology from Earth and then being better for that is completely from the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yes, okay, fine.
Let's talk about the social satire in the movie. You know, the because in the other two movies there was well, at least in Hot Fuzz, there's a very clear social satire, the idea of the villagers being isolated from the rest of the world, and that was very much the theme in this movie as it goes.
Well, you say that, but I actually very much didn't get this social satire thing.
There wasn't a feeling of social satire in this movie.
No, not me. I think I represent the normal viewer, and I don't think I got that. I think I just got a sense of...
The other movies definitely tried to go for a sense of social satire. At least the zombification in Shaun of the Dead represented this idea that we are... Well, maybe it's the idea that we're conformists going along with society. With the main social satire of the village, did you not feel any kind of satire there, this enclosed off village?
No, I just felt a alien society. It just felt horrible. It felt awful. It just felt more artificial than the whole thing in Hot Fuzz. Which I enjoyed, actually.
They took it to an entirely new level, you believe?
Exactly.
So instead of going with this idea that villages are closed off, we are going to this idea that villages are just so utterly alienated from the rest of society.
They were actually aliens.
Yeah, but are we suggesting that? But with this movie, are they suggesting that that these villages are actually alienated from the rest of society to the point where they are completely cut off?
No.
Okay. I think the main point of this is that social satire in this movie is relatively non-existent.
Yeah, but we've just basically bounced off each other, and we've
come to the conclusion.
Come to a blank.
We've come to the conclusion that I'm just going to check what it is a second. So, right. Okay. We're going to talk about the slapped-on ending, because something that the reviews for this film constantly talked about was the idea that this film refused to adhere to a formula, and at least you could say that was true for the ending, but the ending was absolutely just slapped on to the rest of this film. The film could have ended where it was, but no, we had to have this ending with a montage of everything that happened explained by Nick Frost. What was your opinion on the ending?
I hate to agree with you, but yes, the ending does feel very slapped on. It just feels impossible, because...
completely disconnected.
It does, because in the end, as you probably watched the film, you realise that the world ends. Basically, all the technology ends.
And it's the idea that Nick Frost has the agricultural skills to grow food in order to stay alive.
Of course, there's something.
Yeah. I mean, if the world ended, I could totally just go outside and grow a cabbage.
The thing is, he says, of course there's some things I miss, some processed foods.
Yeah, the only thing he misses
and the
is
Cornetto comes up. And of course that's a reference to the rest of the films.
Well, that's bad enough, but there's a few other points compared with the stat on. Let's go for the... Okay, let's talk about quickly now. We're going to go into the actual fact that they do not at all mourn the death of the friends.
Well, they don't because they're not actual friends.
Because
they're just slapped on characters.
Yeah, because when Martin Freeman and Peter Oldie die, they just fuck them. Fuck them. The robots are better than them. We'd rather live with the robots, and despite the fact that the actual corpses of our dead friends are turned into mulch. Fuck that. That doesn't mean anything to us. Who gives a flying fuck about that? If you give a shit about that, then you're a bad viewer. A bad viewer. That is really an incredibly uncomfortable, unpleasant ending, to see the fact that they just brush aside the fact that their friends are dead. If I'm going to compare this to an ending, and I'm afraid I'm going to use a Doctor Who reference for the Doctor Who lovers, the episode Love and Monsters, where Elton, the final character, Elton Pope, I believe his name is, he ends up with his girlfriend, but she is actually a face on a pavement slab, and they kind of go, oh, well, this is a kind of a nice ending. It's not. It's an incredibly uncomfortable, unpleasant ending, and the audience is left with a very jaunty, unpleasant feeling by it.
Can I say something about the
certainly.
ending? I know this is probably another point. Do you mind that?
Yes.
Okay, well, Jesus, come on. Cut that out.
Yes, cut that out. We'll come back to it in the next point, maybe. Well, I would definitely say that this point was not. Let's get on to Gary King's ending. The kind of ending of the character, because this is a character who is left without purpose in life, and so in order to give the film an ending, first time I saw this, I admittedly was drunk, but I managed to forget the final 5 minutes because it is so slapped on. And one of the aspects is Gary becomes a badass and he goes around with a sword, goes to pubs and fighting people. Here's a few things. Firstly, why would he have any allegiance to the blanks or robots, even though throughout the film he said that he pretty much fought them and hated them?
He pretty hated them, yeah.
Yeah. Secondly, why would he become a badass with a sword? And thirdly, why the hell would he kill people? It implied that he killed people. He decided that the way that his life would best be served is by murdering other human beings. What?
Well, why not?
Yeah, why not? I'll just allege myself with a group of robots and then we'll just kill people. I mean, who gives a shit? I mean, films are just, something to sit people in front of and make them drool for a while whilst they admire the fancy graphics. Who gives a shit about story or sense? Okay, I'm very much going over the edge here, but my point being that there is literally no sense behind the character's conclusion. It is very much just an attempt to give a character who has no purpose in his life. When you establish with Gary King that he has no purpose in life, what you need to do is work back in order to make in order to make the audience feel happy for him in life. But I'm incapable of feeling happy for him because he has absolutely no reason to be happy, because his life is walking around killing people for no reason whatsoever other than the fact that they don't like robots, and yet he was the one who was killing 50 Shades of Robots earlier on in the film.
Indeed.
I'm afraid my friend Sykes had maybe lost his point because he is...
I'm trying to remember my point! Okay.
Did you have a point?
Yeah, I'll remember it next time.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the biggest problem in the movie. Is the actual, the main theme of the movie. Because something that's constantly repeated throughout this movie, if you'll excuse me whilst I check my facts, it's actually a phrase from Primal Scream's Loaded, where they talk about how they want to get loaded, and they want to go crazy and they want to have a good time. That is a theme that's run throughout the movie, including the final speech about why humanity is great, which, as we talked about, is a speech that's completely ripped off from every movie ever made where we're confronted by aliens. The problem with this speech is that that they say, we want to get loaded, we'll have a good time, but if you do that, you'll end up wanting to kill yourself. You can't contrast your themes like that.
Okay, maybe that's true. Gary King, it's revealed he has tried to kill himself by cutting his wrists.
But then he says that, actually I want to live by this. It's like, that there is no...
It's two contradicting themes, isn't it?
And yet they are actually both placed as the main themes in this film. It's like, you need to let go of that past where we were free, but at the same time you should live free and be brilliant. There is
No, and there's another thing which says if you live free, you will kill yourself.
Yeah, if you live...
Which is quite a dark message.
If you try to be... if you try to enjoy life and be free, you will eventually want to commit suicide. But you should do that. So, okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go.
Just to cut through all the crap.
Okay, to go out on a real limb here, I'm gonna say that this, the theme of this movie is you should want to eventually commit suicide. I really feel bad for saying that because I know that I really won't mean that. But the theme of this movie is that you should try to be free and then later commit suicide because there's nothing beyond that. It's the theme of the movie. There is
no theme for the movie.
That is the theme of the movie. They repeat it like 4 or 5 times the movie.
Think of the end of the movie. The end of the movie wants you to believe that for some reason the end is good and the destruction of civilization is beautiful.
We talked about Gary King's ending. It is totally without point, and it's just the idea to give a point to the character, even though we have already established that his life is meaningless. Something that we, when researching this film, we looked up on the Wikipedia pages that this film received quote-unquote critical acclaim. Do you think that this film deserved critical acclaim?
Well, the very definition of acclaim is it's fantastic critical review.
Well, do you think that it deserved that?
No.
No, not in any definition, because critical acclaim is a phrase that is used for American Beauty and films with great symbolism, films that delved into the very being of us. Whereas this movie was, at the very most, even taken out of the context of the Cornetto trilogy, it was very much flat, unpleasant, unfun, and not funny.
It was okay. Can I charge with a redefinition?
Bring in your opinion.
I think it was a average film with an average storyline and an average ending. Nothing more. If you try to tie it in with all the other films that they've created, yes, it was terrible. But otherwise, what do you think? Terrible. It was alright.
It was a mediocre film taken out of context, but in context it cannot be considered a great film. And anybody who saw that film and came away from it thinking that was one of the best films that I've ever seen in my life, I would not normally say that somebody who has a certain opinion is wrong, but I would say that you seriously have not seen enough films to make your opinion to think that that is one of the best comedy films of your life. You have missed out on a series of films. In fact, do you know what one of the films that you've missed out on is? The other 2 films of the Cornetto trilogy. If you watched those, you would realise that this is not such a good film. And there are also many, many other films that would make you realise that this is not such a good film, such as films like Airplane and The Naked Gun and other classic comedy films. I know that I've given a very shallow birth of comedy films, but if you believe that those films are the best that you've seen in your life, then you're missing out on a large chunk of the amount of films that you could be taking into consideration. And I really don't want to call people who think that this movie is great stupid. I don't want to call them ignorant.
I wouldn't call them at all because I quite like this film.
Right, and I think that you could consider this film good.
On its own.
But if you consider this film great, you are definitely missing out on a large chunk of what you could be considering as great. Right, final point. This is a point that was raised by my friend Sykes here. You can kick off with it.
I can't even remember it.
Yes, you can. Yeah, the machine's were only around for 20 years.
Oh yeah.
Final point right now, we're going to kick off.
No.
Wait a second. This is Carl Sykes' point, he brought it up to me, and he's definitely got a good point here. Go ahead.
Well, these machines, they've been around for 20 years. Okay?
That's a fully established plot point. They didn't appear until after
1990, yes.
Yeah, when Gary
Precisely.
King and his friends left.
And let's say 1990.
And
At most.
And even in the part of the plot where they say that we were around during the technology days, they say they were only around for about 20 years when they created the mobile phone, the various advantages that were counted then. Yes, Karen.
1990 at most, but possibly before that.
Not much before that.
Okay. Well, Gary King says, before that you can destroy all technology. Well, but between then and now you can destroy all technology, and then they destroy all technology almost until the Middle Ages.
That ever existed. Any form of technological advancement that ever was considered is destroyed. And that doesn't make any sense, because if we were to destroy all technology from when they appeared, we might be set back to the 80s and computers would be a bit shit and phones would be big bricks that we hold to the side of our heads, but we would never be plummeted into the dark ages.
Exactly, precisely.
Telephones, for example, would not be would not be destroyed. And okay, that is our final point. It's our final, quite drunken point. Is that that's a massive plot hole. So this is Felix Jones and Callum Sykes signing off, and we might be quite drunk, or might we?
Well, 12 pints later.
Well, you can decide whether or not we're really drunk, or whether or not we really drank those things. Maybe this is entirely scripted. Maybe it is.
Maybe we're acting.
Maybe we are actually acting at this moment. But I'll leave that to you. And good night. Thank you for watching our review. And even though our opinion of the world's end may contrast with yours, I hope you will look at it from a different perspective, the way that we have. Good night. Say good night.
Good night.